another aspect to why this movie I think would be viewed quite a bit differently, even just 5 years later. Um, I think it's that lady who looks at his eyes and says, "You're not even Mexican."
Yeah, like
Um,
why why it's disappointing that white people are doing this seems to be her sentiment.
yeah, or like, yeah, yeah, and the way this movie plays with race and whatever is, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure someone's still doing this, but this movie, I think it got nominated for Best Picture, didn't it? And like, I'll have to look that up, but I don't know if you can, even just a couple years later. I don't know you can do those jokes now. And then we'll talk about this later, but like the entire relationship of the two uh they're Texas Rangers, yeah. The two Rangers like is entirely like race jokes.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, I don't want to get ahead, but yeah, I think there's like that sort of relationship, like an antagonistic but ultimately affectionate interethnic friendship is like was sort of an artifact of action movies until pretty recently. Um,
Yeah, like the what was it? Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker and all that, and Lethal Weapon movies and stuff.
yeah, and basically every I'm blanking on his name right now. Jesus, who's Dirty Harry? Clint Eastwood.
Eastwood,
Yeah,
yeah,
like every sort of modern day Clint Eastwood movie, he has like that relationship with somebody who's not white. And I think in Gran Torino, he even explicitly like takes the Hmong kid to the barber and is like, "Cut my hair, you dago," and the barber is like, "Screw you, Polak," and then he turns to
yeah,
the kid and is like, "This is how men talk to each other."
yeah, yeah. And there's people that you'll see people say this, that like that an indication of a healthy society is that this stuff happens. Um, which I'll go ahead and say sure. That, I mean, it sounds better than the alternative. So
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. Certainly, my experience uh, has always been that, like, in my male relationships, even with other white people, if they're just like ethnically different than me, if they're Italian, especially, Catholics who are, I'm Catholic, but, Catholics who aren't Irish, like, I certainly feel compelled to insult them. And if people aren't white, we definitely tease each other. But I think it is a male thing because it's sort of similar to it's just a form of giving each other shit. But I think that the one thing that the movies do that's like a little bit eh, I don't know. Of course movies are romantic, but it's like whenever they portray these relationships, it sort of reads like, oh, he really loves this guy and would like die for this guy, but he only knows how to show that affection through like calling him slurs or something. Whereas,
yeah,
like, my experience of life is that there are relationships like that, but you could also just kind of like somebody or feel indifferent to them and still have fun teasing them that way. Like, it need not be like a crypto way of like really strongly bonding with somebody. It's just like, in my view, it's like a legitimate form of humor and communication. So like, you could be great friends, you could be acquaintances, or you could be like somewhat neutral towards one another. But the movies definitely like to portray it as like these old guys that say racist shit love each other so much. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe sometimes, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. This movie, I mean, yeah, I think they handle it in a really fun way. And it's a little interesting because with the two Rangers, the Jeff Bridges character, he goes pretty hard. At least in relation to how much the other guy seems to accept it and give it back. The Alberto, his partner, like I think it's Gil Birmingham or something. He he doesn't really dish much back. Um, so it's a little funny just from like a cultural perspective that they would portray it in that way, that because it's not one for one, that's for sure. It's like 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. How
No,
much
yeah,
Bridges is
absolutely.
giving it.
And I think that you're totally right that he goes hardcore. Like I think he's they're watching like a televangelist in
Yeah.
the hotel room, and he's like, I'd rather have you like cut the head off a snake and like dance around the bed than like
Yeah, do a
listen to
rain
this
dance or
shit.
something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like pretty, and definitely like the if someone were gonna make a movie like this today, you would assume it would be very like a very staid racism where maybe the guy was like, oh, like what are you gonna have for dinner? A taco? You know, it'd be like really
Yeah.
dialed down. But I think what they want us to think about Alberto is that sort of like, and I like this a lot. I like this in movies, whether it involves race or not. But like Alberto is not fighting back because like Alberto is a normal guy with a family and like a healthy relationship to his job,
Yeah.
whereas Jeff Bridges is like never off the clock as far as we know, lives alone and is an insane person. So I think what you're supposed to take from that is like Alberto is just like not a miserable guy, and the other guy kind of is. Even though the other guy is, even though Jeff Bridges is uh, admirable in many ways, he's like, you know, and lots of male characters are like this. Like they're single minded about their project in the movie, in the narrative, in a way that is like somewhat pathological. And
Yeah.
you also sort of know that like okay, Jeff Bridges is like broken and unable to be happy, and Alberto is fine and normal, and that probably means Alberto has to get killed.